My best friend all through grade school and high school was named Steve. Do you remember the intensity, the vibrancy of friendships when you were young? I've lost track of Steve. We moved to other parts of the country, but I still cherish those memories. I have one memory today of a day we spent. He and I went skiing. Now, we lived in Ohio, so it was just a tiny ski hill, but it did have a chairlift. And you know how when the chairlift swings around, you just sit down into it, right? And we sat down into the chair, but I could tell that Steve did not get completely into the chair. And you know, as it begins to go out evenly along the ground, you're trying to get your gloves and poles together, but then suddenly the chair will lift off, right? And he was still struggling to get in the chair. And when it lifted off, he slid even more. Well, I'm still kind of trying to take care of my gloves and poles. Now the chairlift is going up, and suddenly Steve slips all the way down and he's hanging from the chairlift. And I'm looking at him, he's looking at me, not a word passes between us. I had no leverage to pull him up. You know, you're barely sitting on the chair as it is, and the chair is only going to get higher, and we're looking at each other, and I could tell he resolved, I better let go now, because it's only going to get worse. And he just let go, fell through the outer edges of a small pine tree. When he hit the snow, both skis released, he was fine, and he just waved up at me. Now, the rest of the day, as friends, we laughed so hard that entire day about that. Remember laughing with good friends? You could barely breathe. All day long, we laughed about that mishap. Friends. Think now of some of your friends, the laughter and joy they've brought you. Do you know that the ancient Greek philosophers thought having friends is the key to a good life? Plato, Aristotle, Socrates wrote thousands of pages about what makes for a full and flourishing human life, what makes for the good life. And in the end, you could read thousands of pages of their writings, but in the end, it came down to the most basic things. And the most essential thing was to have friends. Almost nothing matters more for a good life than having friends. Sadly, however, recent surveys show that there has been a pronounced decline in friendship in America. Compared to just 25 years ago, people have about half as many friends. Now, to the ancient Greek philosophers, it wasn't essential how many friends you have, but that at least you have one good friend. But in America, people are reporting having less and less, and get this, almost 15% of Americans will say they have no friend. And it's hard to live a fulfilling life without friends. Let me remind you what some of these philosophers said about friendships and how important they are. Aristotle in particular. He thought that one of the key reasons you need to have a friend is to see the goodness within yourself. Aristotle believed, how can you lead a good life unless you see the goodness within yourself? And it's friends that are like this mirror to us that can help us see what's good in each one of us. You see, we tend to be self-loathing, and we will minimize ourselves. It's so easy to be filled with insecurities and not feel that you're good enough, but a friend sees the good in you. A friend will always make the best interpretation of your actions. Now, when we watch other people do things and they're not our friends, we'll often give it a conspiratorial spin. We'll go, oh, they did this because of this, or some nefarious purpose. But a friend always gives the best interpretation of the ways you act. A friend can give you confidence. At times, there'll be areas in our lives that are crashing and burning. We might lose a job, or health issues, or some relationships will break. Sometimes it's your friend that can remember that can help you remember that you're still worthwhile. You still matter. Our friends help us remember the goodness in ourselves. But Aristotle also thought it's our friends that help us stay engaged in the most salutary behaviors, good things like lectures and concerts and things that edify ourselves. Aristotle thought we can flag in our efforts to always engage in good activities unless we have friends. I actually think that's one of the keys to why a church is important. I hope that I'm a fairly moral person, but it's being in a community of people striving to be the most moral and ethical that we can be. I need my friends in church to always keep me working at that. Many philosophers and the ancient Greeks believe that it's friendship that primarily brings laughter and joy into our lives. And like that story with Steve, have you ever laughed harder than you've laughed with a good friend? Friendship is so essential. Washington Gladden, one of the great congregational ministers around the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, he was an amazing mind. Near the end of his life, he said, I think and I hope we've come to the point that we can say religion is nothing but friendship. He thought that's what Christianity is primarily about, friendship. The spirit of friendship with God, friendship with Jesus, and friendship with one another. I think he might be right. Let me tell you something about our gospel. There are 4 words for love in the New Testament: eros, agape, storge, and philia. Now, generally the church really emphasizes agape. Agape love is this sort of love of the most high and noble things, an unconditional sacrificial love. It's beautiful, sort of this high cosmic love. Culture emphasizes eros, the romantic love or the sensual. Storge is about citizenship and such, but the 4th word for love is philia in the New Testament. It's the love between friends. And we can forget that the New Testament was written in Greek. And perhaps the most important form of love for those ancient Greeks was friendship. I think we can forget that when I say religion is about love, I'm also saying religion is about friendship. We can forget that in John 15, Jesus says, now I call you my friends. When I say religion is about love, I mean in a large way friendship. And you could read the word love in English as friend or friendship throughout our entire New Testament. You could read it that God is our friend. And then when we are friends with God, God abides in us and God's friendship is perfected in us. That's 1 John 4. You could read it this way. Friendship is patient and kind. Friendship is never arrogant or rude. Friendship believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Friendship will never end. You could read those texts with the word friend instead of love, because that's the Greek word philia, love or friendship. Faith, hope, and love, faith, hope, and friendship. And the greatest of these is friendship. I love the name that the Quakers use for themselves, Society of Friends. And I imagine that our church too is a society of friends. Think now of your friends. Cherish them. And if you're struggling to have friends these days, know this: you are a friend of Christ. You are a friend of God. You are a friend. Amen.